I'd like to welcome in ESPN's Cronin, voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen, and welcome back, Ron Johnson. So, guys, a couple of topics I like to discuss, starting with PA. And, Paul, as we look at this 2020 Vikings draft class, we got a lot of guys to look at, apparently. Who do you think can step in and be an immediate impact player for the team in 2020?
Well, Gabe, first and foremost, I'd like to officially welcome you to the Vikings Entertainment Network, at least in virtual mode, and let you know that I do not look like this all the time, I promise you. Hi, Ronald, Courtney. I think, with Justin Jefferson, I mean, from a value standpoint, I'm still amazed. A week ago, he was available at 22. You hear the importance of Jefferson learning to beat people on the outside because he's a slot guy. I disagree with that. In 2018, he was phenomenal playing predominantly on the outside. So I think we definitely hit on a Rookie of the Year candidate there. Value-wise, fourth round, James Lynch. He's relentless and kind of getting an idea of what the head coach wants to do with him as of now. Position flexibility, I think, is going to help him a lot on the defensive line. Gabe, I know you recently worked with the Washington Redskins. James Lynch reminds me a lot of Matt Ioannidis. And if he could be 85 or 90% of what Matt is right now, holy cow, I love James Lynch.
Ron Johnson, we're going to send it to you. Who's your guy?
Well, of course, I like PA's take on Justin Jefferson, and I'm always, going to love receivers. But I'm going to have to go with Troy Dye. If you look at a kid who's 6'4", 226 pounds, he's a little bit thin, but he does have that ability to put some more weight on that frame and get to 235. But when you look at the Oregon defense, for 3 years, he played in a 3-4 defense. So he does have some ability to play inside. But then last year, they switched to a 4-3. So when you look at him being a weak side linebacker, he could fill in with an Eric Kendricks and an Anthony Barr. He can play third downs because he covers tight ends and running backs pretty well with his speed. He ran a 4.48 in his makeshift pro day. And so a guy like that, I think, could come in and definitely be a special teams guy and probably a solid backup, but he is going to have the ability to make some impacts on some games.
I like that. And Courtney specifically said she wanted to go last, so the floor is yours, Courtney.
Well, Gabe, I had 15 draft picks to choose from, so I wanted to go a little bit in the weeds here. We'll start out with Cameron Dantzler, the 6'2", 185 cornerback who calls himself the Needle out of Mississippi State. The Vikings used a third-round pick to get him, and as somebody who could potentially compete for one of those outside spots, I could see a battle between him and Holton Hill in training camp that would certainly make for a fun position competition. He does need to put a little bit of weight on his frame. It was something he was doing in the pre-draft process, and that will have to continue at the NFL level. But the Vikings now have 11 cornerbacks on the roster, so they were able to accomplish getting some depth in the draft. Somebody I'm really intrigued by is the 5th-round pick, Harrison Hand out of Temple. The Vikings love him because he's instinctual, smart, he has good size, 5'11", 197, and had a really good combine. Broad jump, vertical jump, all off the charts, and I think he presents the Vikings with some position flexibility. Right now, he looks like a developmental corner who Mike Zimmer can mold into what he wants, but he's really physical against the run, so maybe at the next level he transitions to safety. He's also played a little bit of nickel. Maybe he can go into the slot, but really high upside here. Huge fan of this pick, and maybe he could make some noise next season as a rotational player and potentially as a depth piece.
Hey, Gabe, off what Courtney just said, the Dantzler at 188, I mean, I think that's a phenomenal take. And, when I talked over the weekend with Mike Zimmer about it, he's not concerned about that weight at all. And Zimmer really, really likes Dantzler a lot. But put it in perspective, man. He's 4 inches taller than Jeff Gladney and weighs 20 pounds less. So I think it's definitely something that's going to have to, when they get out on the field, man, something we're going to look for. And when they get out on the field, that competition at cornerback is going to be phenomenal. Trying to figure out where Mike Hughes is going to play once that neck is good, that intrigues me. I'd put him on the inside. I think they've always liked him inside more than outside. But I think Courtney hit on some really, really good talkers.
For sure. And PA, we're going to keep it with you. Who are some good players that the Vikings drafted, in these later rounds that can potentially develop into a star on the team? I know there's a 7th-round guy that stands out to you.
Yeah, the deeper it got, obviously with all those picks, like Courtney said, it was markedly more than I think anybody thought. I came into this thinking it was going to be one of two things, Gabe. They were going to end with like 9 and then hope the majority of them can help now, or murder by numbers, and that's what he did. bit. Brian Cole is a 7th-round safety from Mississippi State, who's very intriguing to me. Brian is built basically exactly like Harrison Smith, probably not as muscular in the arms at this stage of his life, but he's a former wide receiver. From what I understand, he just has an innate ability to do two things that intrigue the Vikings. One, pick up quickly on the route wide receivers want to run. I think Ron could really appreciate that, being one of the great Gopher receivers in the history of the program. And secondly, is Cole has an innate ability to blitz and to sell the blitz when he's not coming. In fact, that may be top of the charts when it comes to his calling card at this stage of his very young pro career. So Brian Cole intrigues me.
Brian Cole can be anything like Harrison Smith in year one. I think Vikings fans will love him. Ron, who's your guy?
Well, I mean, there's a ton of guys out there, like Courtney said, with 15 picks. I mean, you can go with the safety from Michigan. That kid can come in. I like KJ Osborne out of Miami, a receiver who can be a kick return, punt returner, because we know we don't need Mike Hughes back there. But I'm going to go with a guy named DJ Wonnum out of South Carolina. He was drafted in the 4th round. He has size. He's only about 265 pounds. So he's another kid that can probably put on that grown man weight as he gets older in this system. But if you watch his tape, that's what got me. When you watch him go outside, he goes inside. And remember the Saints game when Zimmer put his D ends on the inside. He's a guy that's comfortable moving down to a 3 technique and being just fine. He did that in college at South Carolina, and he created a lot of havoc for quarterbacks. So I think he can be another project in Zimmer's defense, that he can move this guy around and he can stand up as well.
Courtney, we saved the best for last.
You did, and I'm going to go with the player I share a name with. Courtney Davis, the wide receiver out of Texas A&M. Most draft analysts had him with a 5th or a 6th round grade, and he fell to the Vikings in college free agency. Arguably the best value pick they had the entire day 3 of the draft. A 6'1", 201-pound receiver, played a lot in the slot. It's where he thrived. As an Aggie, not afraid to go over the middle of the field and make some really tough catches. If you go back and watch that game against Alabama, watching him go up against some of college football's top cornerbacks, he's not afraid to get physical, make some really tough contested catches, which will certainly translate over to the NFL. Now, when we talked to him on a conference call last week and asked him where he prefers playing, he said he actually likes playing more on the outside, likes to be left on an island one-on-one with cornerbacks and have a chance to sort of disguise his routes. So that position flexibility will certainly help his case as the Vikings try to figure out what they're going to do with their wide receiver depth chart. But it's important to note that he had a chance to go either to the Dallas Cowboys or the Minnesota Vikings, and because Stephon Diggs is no longer on this roster, he sees an opportunity for himself to crack the depth chart and make an impression, and he's wearing number 14 while doing it. Certainly has some big shoes to fill.